Awesome.
Welcome, everyone. This is the next to the last event in the Connected Librarian Day. We have had a great day, and if you haven't made every session, the archive, from what I'm hearing on Twitter, is already posted for some of these sessions, so that's pretty amazing. So today has been a series of great sessions on school librarians, and it has been sponsored by a center that is very close to my heart and Dr. Ross Todd's, CISL. That is a Center for International Scholarship in School Libraries, and perhaps Dr. Todd will help us wrap this up later. Also, it is sponsored by our friends at Follett, and there was some wonderful case studies in last session of winners of the Follett Challenge. So hope you'll check that out as well. Matthew may have already started this, but if you feel like it, grab that magic wand, the star, and let us know on the map where you're from. Lots of folks from the East Coast so far, and a few people. Oh, is Hawaii rep in the room tonight? Let's see. Very cool. And okay, looks like Australia has dropped off, but maybe they'll come back. And maybe some folks in Europe will wake up. We'll see. All right, let's move on. And the room is growing, and please tweet this out. We don't want anybody to miss it. I have been trying really hard to keep up with what's been said and my big takeaways, but feel free to enter your takeaways on our Padlet. Shannon and I, and perhaps Dr. Todd and Britton Follett will help us wrap up with some of the takeaways that you've shared. So we're going to grab those off this Padlet, padlet.com/JoyceValenza/ConnectedLib. And just so you know, the fun of the learning doesn't stop after tonight, because there are another full 2 days of Library 2.014, of which this conference is really just the pre-conference. And so day and night, more exciting library conversation and learning is going to happen. This is all supported by Mr. Steve Harganen and his vision and leadership in supporting our communities of practice and connected learning for so many years. It's been a pleasure to know him and to see his model of leadership. The School of Information at San Jose State is a founding conference sponsor of Library 2.014, of which this is a part. And our hosts for the conference have been Dr. Ross Todd, Shannon Miller, myself, and Britton Follett. And that's the Padlet again, just in case you missed that link. And I am going to let Shannon take over if she's here. I think she is.
Yes.
And Shannon, would you introduce our friends?
I would love to. I am so happy that the next two are two of my amazing friends and 1 through 5 family, Sherry and Matthew, and they are awesome because they met on Twitter, and I saw your tweet earlier, Sherry. That was so cool that you found that. And they have developed this awesome relationship, and I can relate to you too because I've had these over the years with John Shue and Andy Clemens and lots of other friends that I have collaborated with, and so we can't wait to hear your story about when Sherry met Matthew. So thanks for being with us, and you guys can take over.
Yay, thank you everyone. We're super glad that you're here. I'm Matthew, and I'm going to be kicking things off with Sherry. Sherry, I'm actually going to let you start with introductions because, you know, you're ladies and you're more beautiful, and that's a better thing to do.
Always a gentleman. Thank you very much, Matthew. All right. So what you're looking at is kind of interesting because this is actually a picture of one of the very first times that we met in person. So we wanted to kick it off with that as we begin to tell you our origin story. I am Sherry Gick, and this is a picture of me in front of my library at Rossville Middle High School. I've been librarian there, supervising an elementary library and mostly staying in the middle high school library for the past 5 years. This year, I'll give a shout out to Jonathan Werner because we share titles. I am now the Library and Instructional Technology Specialist, which means that I get to not only play in my library, I get to go out and do some PD and work with my teachers and staff, K through 12, 58 certified staff members that I'm working with as we move towards one-to-one. So what I was doing in the library, now I get to go out and take my library with me and go into different classrooms. And I am in Indiana, even though you hear a North Carolina accent. So on to you, my friend.
Oh, I can't wait to figure out what accent you hear with me. I'm a mutt of a person. Anyway, I'm Matthew Winter. Nice to meet you all. I am the author of the Busy Librarian blog and a host of the Let's Get Busy podcast, which is a weekly kidlit podcast. But more importantly, I'm a school librarian. I've been teaching for 8 years in the library and 2 in 4th grade prior to that. And I'm super excited to be here talking with all of you about a really special friendship that I've formed virtually and then in real life, IRL, as they say. So we're going to kick this off and hold on to your seats. Here we go. The main focus today, of course, is that we want to talk to you about finding your educational soulmate and helping kids to rule the world. You know, everyone has a soulmate out there. You just got to find it. And there's an awful lot to be said for finding that educational soulmate in the way that they can challenge you and help you grow and help you really become a better person than who you thought you were, and just the way that you're able to reach your kids. And when you find that, then the way that you can reach those children just increases exponentially. So, Act 1, when Sherry met Matthew. Let me run you through a timeline. Sherry, you want to start? Because I love the way you tell this.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Level Up Book Club, but it's pretty much the awesomest thing that I had ever heard of. I was fairly new to Twitter and was following some talk about gamification, which was very interesting to me. And of course I was following Matthew Winter and the amazing Jennifer Lagarde, who I said has mentored me from afar for the past 5 years without even knowing it. And so they started this great Level Up Book Club, which Matthew can give you more details about, but I joined because I thought, hey, this sounds really, really interesting, and I really want to get more involved and learn more about gaming and how to bring this types of instruction into my library. And so, yeah, I see Matthew's chat there. Jennifer's his Wonder Twin. So I joined in Level Up Book Club in May of 2012. Shannon mentioned earlier, I wish I found it yesterday as we were finishing up our slides. I found the original part where it says Matthew Winter followed me on Twitter that very next month. So it started in May of 2012, Level Up, and I have the tweet where he actually followed me June 2012. So how about that memento, Matthew?
And I've been following you ever since. So Jennifer and I, we built this kind of playground where you can learn about video games and gamification by actually participating in a book club that functioned that exact same way. And that was back in May. And then following that, as relationships online happen, Sherry and I started chatting regularly about doing awesome things and the stuff that we really love about being in the library and just ideas. This is what we do. So those of you looking for where these relationships are, you know, when we're in the library as we are, we're completely alone for the most part, cut off from the rest of the world. There's not really anyone in the school building that does exactly what we do, which is why it's so important to find those people that you can connect with. And Twitter just happens to be one of the most powerful tools for doing that. So we spent June and some of the months following doing that. And then really the first time that we got to kind of see each other was International Dot Day, right, Sherry?
Absolutely. I think that was when you and Shannon had put together a nice Google document for all of us to get together, and the connections had already been made on Twitter, and so we, you know, decided to put together some classes and make some connections. So that was the first time virtually that we met, was when we connected some classes for Dot Day. And that went swimmingly well, right? We had great connections with Dot Day, and I have searched and searched and searched, and I can't find it. But I sent Matthew an email as we followed up after our dot day connections, and I remember some of the wording saying, you know how John Shue and Shannon Miller do that connecting type thing where they connect more than just dot day, and how they connect their libraries, you know, could you maybe do that with my library sometimes in my classes? So I took that first step. I kind of sent that email out, and I was like, hey, what do you think? Should we go for it? Would you be interested in trying something like that? And Matthew said,
Joyce, I should point out here that she was not nearly that shy at all. I happen to be the one that blubbers and trips over my words, not my buddy here. Sherry's very to the point, and that's a really good thing, because so many of us have so much going on, and what we need is someone just to say, hey, I think you're awesome, we should do stuff together. And that's exactly what we did. So by September, we were already starting to think about cool things that we could do. And I really kind of wrapped deeper into this friendship with her and with other people by continuing to level up book club by having a side quest where we read Ready Player One, a phenomenal book by Ernest Cline. And I ran an online game with different simulations, and Sherry happened to participate an awful lot actively in this game. Ended up winning in the Foasis, which will make sense to you if you've read the book. But from there, again, we're just seeing this relationship where the more we're interacting, the more we're learning about one another. And we'll play into this later, but really the more you can geek out with someone and nerd out over the things you really love, the more you realize that it's a person you can trust. And that trust becomes really important in some of these really great collaborative relationships.
I like what you didn't mention about Foasis and the whole Level Up Book Club side quest. He didn't say that Sherry was kind of obsessed with it, but that's kind of what it was like, because I see Sarah in the chat box. We were all obsessed. It was such a cool game to participate in, and we were all about it, Sarah. It was awesome. So we began to think about, with this collaborating, you know, what can we do, and how are we going to connect? And Matthew had some great ideas that had already been kind of ruminating with him, and we decided that we were going to connect third grade classes. And I think the key to connecting third grade class was I had a good friend already in the building that I knew taught third grade, and she would make a good collaborator in my building. And Matthew also had a good friend in his building that would be good to collaborate with one of the classes. So we began this project that we called Earth Pals in November of 2012. And so my class, I work with a third grade class, and we wanted something related to the environment, of course, the theme of Earth Pals. We, at that point, were a school that did not do any recycling whatsoever. And so as Mrs. Welch's class were brainstorming, looking around the classroom and just kind of talking, they noticed and wanted to figure out how much waste could we keep out of the landfill just by recycling. You know, something really, really simple that they could do as third graders and carry that into the school. And so they began to brainstorm, and we began to put that plan into motion. And what we did is, what originally Matthew and I had planned for, this was going to be, you know, maybe a 4 to 6 week collaboration, maybe a little bit more. We had thought basically in 9 weeks we'd be able to do this, and we connected our classes via Skype. They had an Edmodo group where they could talk, and so all this connecting, not just of the two of us, but with our classes connecting and forming some relationships. And so we were sharing how we were measuring the paper, creating different things, and in the end, our classes presented to each other virtually, and you can see kind of our screenshot there of our Prezi that we put together and the kids there talking on the computer and some of the graphs that they've created. And so that audience wasn't just for me, or not just for Mrs. Welk. It became the audience, this was going to be for Mr. Yu and Mr. Winter's class. You know, it was so important that we do a great job on this project and to share with them, and the students were just so involved with that for the greater audience, knowing that their friends would be watching and that they would help them make the presentation better so that they could present to our administration and share the idea.
Right, and to step back again one more step from this, in case there's people in the room, I assume there's a lot of people in the room that aren't familiar with this. Sherry and I have been talking about Earth Pals and what Earth Pals became for about 2 years now, so we've been really involved in this. But it really stemmed from me attending ISTE a couple years ago in San Diego and seeing a slide during someone's slideshow that mentioned TED. It was like TED Middle School. It was this idea of bringing TED Talks to the middle school stage. And when I looked at that, I thought, well, there's no reason why we can't do it in the elementary school. In fact, why don't I try? And Sherry, after we had built up this relationship through Level Up, ended up being that person that I wanted to try that with. So can we have kids ask a question or propose a solution to one of our world's biggest problems and then try to step out of the way and let them solve it? We'll facilitate, we will do everything we can to make sure that they succeed, but know that there's going to be failure along the way. There's going to be a lot of discovery along the way, and we want to give it room to breathe. With the idea, again, that the end goal would be that they could present in that TED Talk kind of style. So these are these central questions that we each started with, and you'll see that we both were looking at the environment. My class wanted to know, my group of third graders wanted to know how much energy we could save simply by unplugging our technology when we're not using it. And as it turns out, it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So if our school could save that much, imagine how much our county could, imagine how much, you know, the whole state could save. We ended up making an infographic using Prezi to show off all of the different statistics that we had gathered, all the data we had gathered from this research, and we found out that we could essentially conservatively, just shutting off the stuff during the school week, over the weekend at night and whatever, not even considering the summer, we could save about $3,000. And that would translate to 9 iPads and 23 Wii consoles. I've written a book with a colleague about using the Wii in the math classroom as a data collection tool. And so that became a really important thing for the kids to be aware of. It was just all of this work centering around what they were doing. And of course, as Sherry and I are doing this, the deeper we go into it, and if I back up on the slides, you'll see that it started in November, and we went all the way until May. And I say that because our kids were so into this, there was no way to not let it breathe and take the time that it was doing. And of course we had interruptions of snow and interruptions of school conferences, but really the reason why this went on so long is because the kids were so into it and they wanted to make it more and more and bigger and bigger. And so we did, and we let them see that vision.
And they were working on it as far as, you know, thinking about this during library time with you, so kind of a once-a-week type setting. And the same for me. I was visiting their classroom, leaving my library and then going into the classroom. And so as we talk about how engaged they were, they still, there was some carryover into the classroom, but we tried to limit it really to that 1 hour a week.
And you're right, 1 hour a week, and I saw my kids 45 minutes a week, plus the classroom teacher was collaborating with me. And so we were, Albert was taking on a lot of the writing stuff that could happen on a day-to-day basis. I was looking much more at a broader picture. And then we were also connecting with Sherry's kids and Gretchen's kids in order to exchange ideas and see how we could make the project better. So the students got to see this massive collaboration happening and openly see the teachers talking between one another, sharing ideas. We submitted our idea to ISTE for their SIGLID Technology Innovation Award, and we ended up winning. So that was really cool too, that we got to share not only these big ideas, but feel confident enough and feel supported enough in our community, in our schools, to want to reach out to a greater audience, and then for ISTE's special interest group to share some love back on us, recognizing us that way was really cool. And really why I bring that up too, and why Sherry and I are talking about that, is because you have this opportunity that if you're doing these cool things, these great collaborations, you can submit it to the ISTE and win a whole bunch of cool prizes, but more importantly, get your work recognized and let it reach a wider audience so then more people can be involved. Because the next thing we're going to talk about is really what has happened because people became more aware of what Sherry and I were doing with Earth Pals and wanted to be involved as well. And so rather than watching them all be involved, we decided, why don't we go one step bigger and try to get everyone involved in one massive movement to make this world a better place by having kids find the solutions to our problems.
So after we wanted to present, again, as we're telling you about our Earth Pals project, we wanted to, after we had won the award at ISTE, we wanted to share with our colleagues at AASL. And so, but we wanted to, like Matthew said, we wanted to take it to the next level. So how could we grow this project? And so as we were collaborating online, planning our presentation as far as what we wanted to share about Earth Pals, and what we wanted to combine, we began to think about the origins, how we wanted our students to end with this presentation TED Talk style. And as we talked about what Earth Pals had looked like in each of our settings, it was like this revelation. Genius Hour had just started to get a little popular as far as others using it. And as Matthew and I talked back and forth, we're like, oh, so we've actually been doing a modified Genius Hour for the past, several months with our kids. As far as we've been doing that, we stepped back, like Matthew said. We got out of the way. We framed it with the question as far as they were working all towards the common goal, but we didn't tell them how to solve that problem. We said, how do you want to measure? We let them figure out how they wanted to measure things and really try to let them do the problem solving. And so that's what we really wanted to frame for this next year, and knew that genius was the word because we had seen so much genius from our kids from that year. And so we came up with the idea that we wanted to call it Genius Con, with our tagline, let's show the world our genius. And so that became our theme this past year for our project. And as Matthew said, we really wanted it to be a type of project where it wasn't just a class in Indiana and a class in Maryland connecting. We wanted it to be bigger so that more people could participate. We could see more genius from kids all across the nation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We wanted a conference of geniuses, and we wanted to put their work on spotlight. And what we found through the ideas that people were sharing based on our own Earth Pals work, we were hearing that there were people that wanted to try it in different grade levels. And really, I said straight up, look, we did it with third grade, but I want to prove that we can go even younger. I want to prove that we can put the ideas of even younger kids front and center, and allow them to accomplish something really great. So we took on first grade. Sherry, Mrs. Wells took on first grade as well, and then we encouraged other people to get involved. And what you're going to see in Genius Con is that we had, with the goal in mind, first graders with these solutions to world problems, talking to middle school kids, to college kids, to other adults. We had all of these people crisscrossing with the affirmation that we all have these great ideas to share, and it does not matter how old you are or where you come from or what level of education you have. Sometimes we just need to listen. We need to listen to the ideas that are coming out of the mouths of the people around us. Turn down our own voice just a little bit so we can hear that genius that they're sharing, because in no small sense of the word, there is genius coming out of the mouths of our children, and we need to allow it an opportunity to change us and to change our schools. So we kept pushing this language. You are geniuses, and you can change the world. So yes, we were talking about these are based on TED Talk and based on Genius Hour, and I encourage you to go look into those resources if you're unfamiliar with them. But you're going to see that this work is really a hybrid of that. And we laid claim to this as the year of the genius, and I think the year of the genius is something that just keeps going on and on, because every time that we agree to walk away from the standardized tests and to ignore those high pressures that are put on our teachers and on our school in order to do what we know is right, because it's meaningful to our children, because it is authentic learning, because it's what's going to stick with our kids, then we know we're doing something right. So this is the year of the genius. We are claiming this. We are making change. We are being that change that we want to see.
Matthew.
So here's the question we asked colleagues. Sorry, Sherry, go ahead.
I just wanted to just emphasize as far as, I mean, that was the biggest thing that you and I talked about. We just knew that it's an opportunity that unfortunately many of our students don't get from day to day. And so in the library we were able to give them that as far as this is the safe space, this is where we want to hear your ideas, we respect your ideas, and we want to know this key question right here. If you could change one thing about your school, what would you do? Knowing that, our first graders would answer very differently from our 8th graders, from the college students that participated, but all of their ideas would be genius because it would be theirs, and by giving them the platform and the respect of sharing their ideas, that those ideas would be valued. And again, not something that we always are able to give them outside of the library, unfortunately.
So what if you could be the change, right? What if all these things you see going on wrong in the school, what if you could change it? What if you're a 10th year teacher and you realize that, wait, I actually have a stake in changing this? What if you're 8 years old or 6 years old and you get the opportunity to see that you can make change in your school? Imagine how powerful that is, how empowering that is. So we wanted to say that this is not a librarian project. This is not something we're going to do in our libraries and be closed off. This is something much larger than that, and it involves many more stakeholders. And if we close it off to just the library or just a classroom, then we're not allowing change to happen. So instead, it's a crosswalk. It's a place for us to meet and to talk and to have those conversations that need to happen. We're going to put it out on the table. We're going to have the conversations. We're going to make change. And the bottom line, of course, is that it is all about the students. You get out of the way, you let those students explore their ideas, take risks, and you show them that you are here to support them. You are here to make this learning happen. You know, all of this we're saying because we're doing this again, and we want you involved. And we are about to talk about finding your educational soulmate, because that's so important. But before that, we wanted to engage you in a way that you can make a meaningful change that can be life-changing for you. I'm sure Sherry can attest the same thing, but this has been one of the most meaningful things I have ever done in my career, getting to see my 25 children transformed in this first grade class, and wishing that I could do the same rigorous thing with the rest of my 780 kids at my school. This is a really big deal thing, and it will change you if you allow it.
So as we propose this question, if you could change one thing about your school, what would you do? As we said earlier, it looked a little bit different for everybody. We had Andy Plemons at David C. Barrow Elementary School. They did this great brainstorming together where they were beginning to make this chart with the paper, and you can kind of see the responses as far as after-school events. We should have, if you think it's a good idea, clubs for after school. And so I see Andy says, you know, what kind? Well, what about chess club? Different things like that, because after school events sound like fun. And Andy, I can't remember what grade this is. I think maybe it was second, or I know it was a primary grade. So their classes joined in and just had some really interesting ideas for changes and projects that they took on. Matthew, here's your kids.
Yeah, at my school, my first graders took on the idea of bullying. The words they used with me were, we want to find a way to stop kids from being so mean to one another. We're at last year, our school opened. So brand new school, we're learning culture, we're developing culture, we're trying to figure out who we all are, because my kids came from 4 different elementary schools to become this new population. And there was this sort of pecking order that they were all trying to work out. Those that were top dog at their previous school ended up being nobodies at this school, and those that were always in the limelight, some of them wanted to take more of a back seat. But you just kept seeing this thing changing and changing over and over. No one really knew what their home was. And so there was weird acting out, and there continues to be a bit of acting out. And so my first graders wanted to stop that and wanted to see if they could find a way that the staff would want to get involved and the students would want to get involved to helping stomp this out as well.
My first grade class, and I say my first grade class, it was actually Mrs. Welts, because she took the project on by herself at the elementary level this past year and led them to pair up with Mr. Winter's first grade class as they tackled bullying as their main topic. I did the project with 2 separate 8th grade classes, and they had all kinds of ideas. Rather than having just one theme as a class, I let them, again, I facilitated the discussion, but to let them decide on what types of changes that they wanted to see and propose. And so at the end of the 9 weeks, I had groups of students that presented to our administrators about all types of changes they'd like to see, as far as building a greenhouse, growing food for our cafeteria, adding a football team, changing the way dress code violations were handled, which actually went into effect this year. And so that was really awesome for them to see as freshmen this year that the idea that they had proposed actually was considered by administration and found to be genius and put into place. But again, we were embracing the fact that, you know, look at what you think needs to change. So again, their ideas of what needed to change were very different than my first graders, but no less valid at all.
So we're going to move quickly to the end here, because this is really the charge that we set forth to our library friends and our educator friends last year, and we raised it to you as well. And certainly there's more information on GeniusCon if you look it up. It's on Sherry and my blogs, as well as on School Library Journal. Joyce has been kind enough to share some of that with all of us. But we want to just know, what will change look like in your school? And there's so many different ways to take this on, and there's so many different things that you yourself can anticipate. And maybe you will have a game plan that looks like 100 different ideas all spread out, and you got to find one to follow through with. Or maybe you'll let all of your students try to do Genius Hour style, pursuing their own different ideas and seeing how each one could take shape. It doesn't really matter. There's so many different ways to take this on, and the most important thing is the actual first step, is the doing. It's not what you choose to do, but rather that you do it yourself. So we walk through all of these different steps on how to do this work, and you brainstorm these ideas with your class or with your students, and you select what ideas you're going to do, and you suggest solutions to that problem, and you choose the path that you're going to follow, and you collect data about it, and you modify your work as needed and reflect on the process, and then you share out with the world, and you build community around change. There's your bottom line, building community around the change. It starts so small. It starts with an idea, but it grows into change, and that's something that when you look back on it and you get to see that your idea was at the genesis of that, it's a really powerful and empowering idea. So this May,
and I think we'll do
it again.
Yes, this May. And well, as far as we go back, I can't help but think when we say build community around change. I mean, look at our audience. As connected librarians, this is what we're all about. We are the change leaders. You know, we're the ones that are bringing these types of things to our staff, to our students, and so this community, as we continue to share, it's what we definitely are built around, leading this charge for giving students voice in their education and being the change in our schools. Sorry, I had to butt in with that.
I love that you did. So this May we're going to have a GeniusCon. We're doing it again. So maybe tomorrow you'll go into your school and you'll sit down with your kids and you'll say, you know what, I would just love to know if you could change one thing about our school, what would you do? And let the idea go from there. Or maybe you want to build up a community on Twitter, or maybe you need our support, or maybe whatever. Maybe you want to do it at a staff meeting. It doesn't matter. Aim for May. In May, we'd love to have you join us and just share what ideas your kids came up with. Let your kids share, more importantly, your students share. Sorry, I'm in the elementary world, everyone's a kid. What sort of ways that they want to change the world. We're doing a virtual conference connecting geniuses of every age in every class worldwide. We coordinate Google Hangouts. We have a website where we're sharing our different ideas. We have an Edmodo group that we are sharing student work that isn't allowed to be public. You know, some kids there's photos of kids and names of kids that can't be made public, and so we created an Edmodo group that can be behind a safe wall, so it's okay to share in our community and not and still feel that connection without feeling like you're compromising their identity. That's totally okay. But the most important part, again, is that you give them that platform to share. There's going to be roadblocks. You know you're going to run into them. Push through them. There's a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of time is an issue. But just keep looking at the faces of those darling children who may or may not actually look like the faces of camels. But look at those children and know that they are going to change you and they are going to change the world.
And when we hit the roadblocks, what do, friends? We connect on Twitter and we say, it's one of those days. I need my PLN to get me through. I'm the only one at my school that's charging forward, but I'm doing it. We're charging forward because, again, we're putting those kids first. And you know we all have those days.
Wow. You guys make me so proud to be a librarian. I'm just, you know, it's so funny because we hear so many complaints all around the country, and then we get together and we hear Jonathan's statement like, this has been the best, most remarkable year of my career. And you know, that's the way I feel every year, because every year I'm discovering new things from my colleagues. Every year I'm finding new educational soulmates. And every year I'm discovering new ways to give learners, or to have learners discover that they have agency, that they can make these changes in the world. I think we should open this up to questions. So please put questions and ideas in the chat. And please also ask to take the mic. Does anybody have any questions for our two friends?
While you prep your questions, let me fast forward, because we got just a couple more things we wanted to share with you about the how to make friends and find friendship and awesomeness. But please post your questions. We want to answer them. We're all geniuses. Here's our hashtag. You can follow it. I know people have been putting it in the chat box. We're going to use our ideas and voices together to make our schools better, because we're going to show the world our genius. It's what it's all about. Peggy is saying, if you're just getting started on whatever, which project would you recommend? Peggy, I'm going to answer your question in twofold. If you were just getting started on doing some sort of a GeniusCon project, then I would say having an opportunity with your class just to ask them those questions and have them write down their ideas. Just imagine a giant idea wall of the craziest things, the craziest ideas that these kids would try to make change on, to get all of that out of your system. To just keep adding them until you see what one thing everyone starts nodding at and going, you know what, we really ought to try to make that change. That's where I would approach it. If you're actually talking about making an educational soulmate, finding a soulmate, we're going to hit that right now. Look at this timeline. Sherry and I have spent nearly 2.5 years together, and the things we've been doing together have just been getting increasingly more involved with one another, to the point where we are now, where Sherry can just kind of call me up on Google Hangout and just say, hey, I have an idea to do this, want to do it? And we just kind of do it. It's awesome. It's like we're doing things second nature. We're in autopilot. We're not thinking about, oh no, it's the Matrix, isn't it? we're not thinking about the how it's going to work out. We just jump in and we know that it will work out. That we'll manipulate what we need to. We'll make things work. We'll make the time flexible, and it'll make it awesome. So there that is. Sherry, you want to talk about ways to be collaborative together, and then we'll open some questions here?
Sounds good. I don't know if any of you know this, but they're typing it in right now. My friend Matthew has an amazing podcast, and he has all types of authors and graphic novelists and sometimes librarian friends that he will interview. And so I had the distinct pleasure of being his first guest, and then we did a revisiting together a year later to celebrate. And one of the things we came up with as we were talking for the podcast was we came up with our most excellent guide to collaborative partnerships. We were talking about the best ways that we thought that you could seek out similar how to form these relationships, and how ours got started. So we've given you the timeline and how everything just kind of snowballed as projects get bigger and bigger. So that's kind of the background to where this list began to take shape. Oops, go back. All right.
My bad. Okay. Clearly, we're both clicking on the slides at the same time. I'm so sorry.
Take it away, Matthew.
Okay. We have six ideas. Again, if you look up Let's Get Busy podcast, Sherry's been on twice now, and the most recent time we talked about our relationship, our genius pal relationship here, which is what this comes directly out of. So here's the 6 things we have ideas for how you can find a soulmate to kick things off. And the first is, in your building, look for new hires. New hires, we know in collaborative relationships, but that's often the best place to start. You look for someone who's new in the building because they're open to ideas, they're open to trying ambitious things, and they also are fresh out of school, so often they are like clay to be molded. They're ready to try whatever you want, and they're ready to see what they can grow and become. Sherry, you want to take the next one?
Yes, and that doesn't mean that you can't start with a friend, because maybe there's somebody that you have been teaching with that's in your building, and you have maybe it's just a surface relationship, and you approach them and say, hey, we get along, and I'd really like to collaborate more. I feel like, we could take this to the next level. We could do some amazing things with your classes and some ideas that we could put together, and together we could make something awesome happen. So either start with new hires or start with, somebody that you're friendly with already in your building.
And when you do, it's very important that you are transparent, of course, that you are very clear in your intentions and what you want to accomplish. No gray area here. We want to, in a collaborative relationship, you don't want any surprises in that sense of in the sense of things that can go really wrong. Like, hey, I thought you were going to take this massive part of the project on yourself. What do you mean you're not doing it, or you're not willing, or you don't have time? Being really transparent in what you hope to accomplish, what you hope the students can accomplish, and what the timeline that you have in mind is going to go a long way.
Be flexible. As we've talked about, things come up. Things happen when you're collaborating, especially when you're collaborating across states like Matthew and I do. And so there are times when there are some scheduling conflicts and times when state testing might get in the way. But that flexibility and knowing that you're going to, again, push through those roadblocks it's just part of the game. Not everything can go according to plan 100% of the time. So being flexible is definitely a skill that we all as librarians already practice every day as we juggle all our plates, but very important to remember as you're collaborating with others, especially those that aren't librarians, because we have to remind them that flexibility is very important.
Right, especially when it comes to sharing different technology, like old school technology, like the console we were showing. Sherry taught me a new language. It's probably because she's from the middle and high school, and that's DTR. define the relationship. So Sherry and I are at a point now where she knows that I like to take on really big, risky projects, and I really have no problem at all with them failing because I know we'll discover really cool things along the way. But that is not that's not common. People like when things work. I've Skyped with maybe many of you. I've Skyped with a lot of people I know, even just in Skyping to read a book together, that people really want to make sure it works really, really well. So define that relationship up front so people are aware of exactly what you're trying to accomplish. How long is the project going to last? What do you want to do? And certainly start small. My word, every library presentation I go to recently, we always bring this up, and that is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So please, one bite at a time on these relationships so you can end up having a great feast later.
Following up, because as you complete a project together, it's imperative that you follow up and share your reflections. I know none of you are critical of projects that you've done. As Matthew and I always talk about things together after we've completed projects, it's really good to have that other set of ears, because he points out some of the amazing things that maybe I'm being critical about, and vice versa. So we tend to see the good in what has come about and the learning, and so as we reflect, we're able to tweak and decide as far as, okay, this worked really well, and I like the way the students were able to explore, and what if? As we evaluate, again, that's when it starts to snowball. What if we tweaked this one little portion of it? And that's how new ideas are born through the reflection and evaluation process. And I see Barry at the bottom there. I'm skimming back through, making sure that we hit all the highlights here with our 6 points. I'm considering if the timing is right to begin a new collaborative project together. Because as Matthew said, as we talk about number 5, defining the relationship, some people just want to do, maybe they just want to connect with Dot Day and have that connection and maybe share a pen pal type project and then be done with that. And so you have that date and you're done. And so then as you follow up, you may decide to, again, to grow that relationship or to continue that relationship and expand it and see if you do want to start something and then start another timeline together.
Right. All of these I was just saying too, or rather I was just saying, and then I realized that my microphone was turned off. All of these things are on the show notes at busylibrarian.com. If you look up Sherry, and this episode will come up. It's all on there. But you know, these are things that I think Joyce could attest to, and all of us could attest to, that you go through over and over and over. You don't just have one soulmate in the world. You've got many, many educational soulmates out there. And in fact, I'm going to embarrass her right now because I see that she's in the room. There's a media specialist that is part-time at my school this year, and her name's Eileen Gardner, and she's in the room. Eileen Gardner, number 2. And she and I are going through this right now, that I really feel like fate has brought us together, as it were, that we really seem to share the same passions and the same focus for our students and the same drive for trying new things out. And that's something that takes time to nurture, but is so exciting and so invigorating when you find someone else in the world that has those same interests as you do. And that's why it's so important to be connecting over Twitter. So always be excellent to each other, right? Come on, you know this. You know, you're smiling. I know you're all smiling right now. I'm smiling.
If we turned our mics on, they'd all be giggling a little bit too, right? Because that would be
no doubt.
The bottom line. In any collaborative relationship, in any relationship, it's very important. Be excellent to each other.
You know, we started off with an image of, before I click on the final slide, we started off with an image of Sherry and I when we first met, which, as Sherry said, was months and months, maybe 7 or 8 months into our relationship, because we had known each other virtually up until then. And this image about to come up is one of the most recent things we did together. Because Act 3 is that the unknown is a wild and wonderful place. And that final thing that she and I did together recently was that we got to share the stage to sing a song at ISTE. You just never know where these things are going to take you. And I love that I've been able to do so many different things with Sherry, and that it's all been amazing. It's been a true friendship. And my wish for all of you is that when you leave this room, that you'll find value in finding that educational soulmate that can help you to grow and to become better than yourself, and to inspire you and to help you to serve those children in ways that you can't even imagine. What do you think, Sherry? Closing notes? I've got some questions in the chat box that I'm super excited to get to, but what are your thoughts? You're looking at me clearly in this picture, realizing what did you get yourself into?
I'm smiling looking at this picture because, again, as when you find someone to work with, it makes everything better because, again, as the only person at your school in your situation, it's just you have plenty of teachers to collaborate with, which is great, but having somebody that completely knows your situation, I think, as far as and knows how it works is the key. So find your soulmate. Find your educational soulmate.
No doubt. We want to make sure we wrap this up with enough time for you to get to the next session. So it's 8:52 right now. Let's take no longer than like 3 minutes to answer questions, if that's all right. And so, Sherry, if you scroll back on the chat box, I already have one from James Allen, number 3, and he says, I'm trying to figure out tackling scheduling at the high school level. Where does the Genius Hour fit in, and how much must change for it to work? Sherry, you did this in a middle school, so at the elementary school level, I have classes coming in on a schedule, but you don't in the middle school. So can you give a little insight into how that worked?
Well, actually, at the middle school level, I did it in a fixed class, as far as I had a time when the class was, when these students were with me each day, and so we designated a time for the Genius Hour. I have a flexible schedule at the middle high school level, but I do schedule classes, and so if Genius Hour is something that you want to pursue, you could open it up as a certain time of day for students that wanted to participate, or again, collaborate with a teacher and have them scheduled to come into the library, or for you to go to their classroom and do the Genius Hour. I think it has to be a little bit of both, as far as you have to have that time kind of set aside that they're going to be working and exploring together.
Right. Julia Hendricks asked about, I tried convincing admin teachers that by doing something like this, we integrate multiple curriculums, higher level thinking, etc., but testing seems to get in the way. So any suggestions to convince teachers? I'm a really big fan of it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. So I just did it, and I think Sherry just did it. I knew that this was the right thing to offer my children. So, sometimes you throw the map out the window and you just go off-road. And so that's what worked for me. I'm not saying that's the best thing to do, but when I kept my principal in the loop all the time about what we were doing and how it was going, and she just got more and more excited. I mean, imagine how good I was making her look and our school look just by her trusting me to do something awesome and being able to do something awesome with our kids. So hopefully you doing cool stuff will translate to your teachers wanting to do cool stuff as well. Because, us librarians, we got to be early adopters, and we got to be the rad people in the building.
And if your teachers don't want to do cool stuff, then you still have access to those kids that are coming to you and coming to your library. And so you can have the kids do cool stuff and connect with other librarians outside of your building and connect them with other classes. So if you can't get the teachers to collaborate because of those testing standards, that still doesn't mean that you can't lead the way for the kids and give them their voices and things like that while they're in the library. Although we're saying it's not a library project, the library is definitely the best playground for these types of ideas to begin in and then to spread as the teachers see how excited the kids are and what amazing things they're doing. Then I think they may be even willing to jump in and do some collaborating and push aside some of those things.
This is a fabulous session. Matthew, if you have another word or two, but I think we have one more minute, and I'm going to ask Dr. Todd to wrap up. But Matthew, did you want to finish?
No, I was literally going to say, I think we need to end. Maybe the best way for me to finish is that Peggy George said, quote, I'll have what she's having when Harry met Sally. That's the way you're making me feel. Who wouldn't want this? So the question, who wouldn't want this? Let that be in your brain as we leave you tonight. Thanks again.
Ross, you want some final words?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Matthew and Sherry, that was truly inspiring stuff. You know, I've been reading some of the work of Goran Ladwig out of Australia on productive pedagogy. How do you create rich and meaningful learning experiences through quality teaching? And you both have are just living wonderful examples of how you enable kids to develop intellectual agency, personal agency, social and cultural agency. You bring that together in such a compelling and meaningful way. I actually loved your reference to agency because I think that this is such a powerful idea and what is at the heart of quality teaching and learning. Thank you so much for such an inspiring session. Well done indeed. I look forward to the continuing story. Thanks.
Okay, friends, so our last session of the evening, I hope that you will all join us, come right over, because the fabulous library girl, Jennifer Bard, is going to close up, and then we will have a final reflection after Jennifer, and we hope you can join us for that as well, and we want that to be a real sharing session, so get ready to think and share in that very last event. In any case, we're going to have to stop the recording and close the room, but before we do, grab this link and join us, and Jennifer's, I'm sure Jennifer's already there. So we'll see you soon.